It is time for game number 10 from Bobby Fischer's My 60 Memorable Games. This is the game Fischer versus Unzicker that took place in Switzerland, Zurich, Switzerland in 1959. Here's the game, and if we open it up, we can see part of it's clipped off there for you, but we can see the game here. And if we go to opening classification, ChessBase will show us where this game occurs in the big key. As I've said before, the big key is based upon the ECO, the Encyclopedia of Chess Openings, developed by Chess Informant back in the 1970s. And here we are, we see the game Fischer-Unzicker. Now, we have been here before in the game Fischer-Chigorin, which is also listed right after it. You may notice that I had a duplicate of the Chigorin game, which I have now deleted. But in any event, if we select both of those and we merge them to merge them, and here, let me see if I can shrink that down a little bit, and you can see the full game. And you see here is the game. There's the rook coming onto the d file, the queen escaping, etc. So we have seen all of this before, and finally we get here. Queen takes g4. Chigorin will play the move knight to b6, and we got these moves here. But Unzicker is not going to do that. He is going to play instead f6. And it is going to be an interesting game. We're going to get a very interesting end game. So anyway, that's where we are in this game. It made it a little bit easier to understand because I had already done the first 22 moves. And so this 65 move game was really only about 40 moves to try and learn. So yeah, let's get into it now, because the purpose of this video is for me to be able to replay the game from memory. So let me open up Lucas Chess and get that started. All right, I've opened up Lucas Chess and I'm in the Memorize a Game feature. And you see here is Fischer and Unzicker. And so let's go ahead. I'll click Learn. And you see here I started with 20 errors and 10 hints. So that's basically 30 errors for the 65 move game. And let's give it a go here. See if I can do this. Bobby's playing the white side, so I will play the white side, and or the board will be oriented from the white side. I am playing both white and black. Let me see if you can see the board. It looks like it's all good. So here we go. Let's see if I can get into a closed Ruy first. Shouldn't be too hard. I believe this is Morphe's, and out comes the knight to f6. White castles. Now it is possible for black to take this pawn, and that's called the open Ruy. This, with the bishop to e7 move, is the closed Ruy Lopez. The rook comes here to e1. This pawn now is definitely defended, and so black plays b5. The bishop gets driven back to b3. And here comes the d6 move. c3, and black castles. Now, it might be asked, why doesn't black first play the bishop to g4? And in the investigation that I've done on that, in that case, h3 and g4, driving the bishop back, is favorable for white. So that's my understanding currently. Always be sure to check what I say for yourself, but that's my understanding. So we get castle here, and now we do want to play h3. The knight comes over, the bishop hides, and c5. White fights fire with fire and plays d4. Now, the queen comes to c7, and in this variation, the knight is going to make the journey from b1 to d2 to f1 and then to e3 without any interruption, without any intervening moves. That's just how this variation works. The rook here now comes over to e8. Black has a definite goal of getting both of his rooks on the D and E file. And in this variation, g6 is played to prevent the knight from having access to the f5 square. And now it is time for the center to be liquidated. Yeah. And pawn takes pawn, pawn takes pawn. And now we get the bishop. White to move. We get knight to h2. The rook comes over. So black is achieving his goal of getting both the rooks on the d file. The queen really has to get out of there because of potential discoveries. The bishop does move to e6, and this d file is open for the black rook. Knight comes up to g4. Knight takes knight. Pawn takes knight. The queen now comes up to c6. And the pawn gets pushed to g6, to g5. This is called Fischer's move. The knight comes here onto c4, but Bobby does not want to exchange. Bishop takes knight, queen takes bishop, and now here we are. Chigorin will play the knight back to b6. Not Unzicker. f6. Pawn takes. Bishop takes. Now, it did occur in the Chigorin game that there was a launching of the pawn at some point. So attacks over here on the queen side do occur. And so Bobby plays a4. Now the knight comes back to b6. That seems rather common. Pawn takes pawn, pawn takes pawn. Now I think we're at, can you see it over there? I think we're at move 26. And I was laughing as I was going through this. I thought, oh, Bobby gets his dark squared bishop developed on move 26. Well, that's an improvement over the Chigorin game where he got it developed on move 29. Bobby's getting better. Okay, now we're going to just have to make sure I get these move orders correct. The rook is going to come over and there's going to be a contest on this file and on this file. So the A and the D file are very active. Unzicker feels like his king will be safer on h8. Maybe that's true. Here with the move b3, this is really a no man's land in here, isn't it? With these pawns, both the black and the white pawns, on these squares on the fourth rank. Now, the bishop is going to come back here to g7. And that makes this square, the d8 square, an interesting target. Bobby will play his queen over here to h4, attempting to take advantage. After, for example, if he were allowed to play rook takes a8, then rook takes a8, and then the rook comes down. Rook takes rook, and then queen takes rook. Check, and white looks pretty active. So as odd as it is for Unzicker to move his bishop from f6 to g7 and now immediately back to f6, it's not really odd at all. So the bishops are going to come off. This square is still, this d8 square is still a little bit of a target. Unzicker exchanges rooks now and pulls this rook on the D file off over onto the A file. It will still make effective use on the A file. Now what? This knight is going to move to F6. And Bobby, for his part, wants to attack the B5 pawn. And here I believe it is the knight, that's right. And rather than immediately move his bishop onto the E2, he first puts his rook onto the 7th. And the queen comes over to support the rook coming up. So we get this bishop E2, rook E7. Bobby takes the rooks off the board and grabs a pawn. So let's see, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 versus 4. So a definite problem for Unzicker. The king is going to come up here and support the rook on the knight on F6. Because Unzicker wants to be able to move his queen over here. The bishop comes back, the queen comes over to C7, and Bobby says, well, if you're going to move your queen over there, I'm going to move my queen over there. And this continues now, like this. Bobby will take the opportunity to move his king to G2. Now, I'm not honestly certain what Unzicker is thinking, but my hypothesis is that he did not take the B3 pawn because he just thought this queen would be way too powerful, something like that, and getting into this behind enemy lines type of thing. And so that's why I think he thought better of it. But nevertheless, these pawns, the B and C pawn and black C pawn are going to have to be resolved. So we're getting these queens doing a little bit of dancing around here. Now we've got Unzicker's got two attackers on the E4 pawn, and Bobby simply reinforces. Unzicker comes back to B6. And we need to get these pawns resolved, Bobby says, and so we get this exchange like this. Now, there is an attack on F2. And so the knight comes here to G4. So Bobby has to handle that, and he does. And now the queens are off. And we are approaching the ending of this game. Yeah, the king begins coming over, and Bobby launches a pawn right away. The king continues to come over. And now Bobby brings his king up. This knight is threatened. Unzicker does not defend. That would make this pawn very weak. I think there would be significant problems there. Unzicker already has enough problems with this passed pawn. It is quite dangerous. Now with that pawn, with the knight having gone back, And one assumes, and it's a very interesting series of moves, one assumes that, Unzinger's bringing the king over here, and Bobby says no, as it were. Unzinger comes up. Bobby comes back, saying, oh, well, I was just kidding, I suppose. And now the king goes back. So here, this is a great move, I think. This trying to get additional control right here. And the king cannot come up, I don't think, because we're going to get pawn takes pawn with a check, and then I think this pawn is, going to promote. The king would have to capture. I don't think the knight is in any ability of stopping the pawn. So, yeah, that's a great move. Unzinger wants to move his knight now and get it over there to the C file. Bobby uses this as an opportunity to take the pawn. Now we're, serious trouble here. And if we look at the squares that are controlled, I won't use an arrow. I'll use marks. This square is controlled. This square is controlled. This square is controlled. This one, this one, this one. Did I get them all? This one. So it's very, very interesting. This king has some limited mobility now. All right, now what happens? Does the knight come over immediately? No. I think there's a question in Unzinger's mind. Is the king coming this way, or is the king coming this way? Right? And what do I do with my knight? Which way should my knight go? I've already moved it back. So I think Unzinger plays h6 in order to try and resolve that question. Of course, it would be nice if he could create a passed pawn here. But I think, I don't know. I think there's trying to control these squares and preventing the king from going in this direction. And Bobby moves to e3. So it would seem that it had the effect that it had that effect. So the knight comes over and the king continues to come up. So now these pawns get pushed, or the h pawn. And so the king comes back, right? And obviously he's going to come up here, and Unzinger prevents that. But here comes the bishop. There's really nothing left to do other than push the pawn. Pawn takes pawn, pawn takes pawn. And I think, at the very least, we can say Unzinger accomplished getting a passed pawn. That's an issue for Fischer. So the problem is he's only got one pawn. One pawn versus three. So, and it's a knight versus a bishop, and this is relatively, I would call it an open position, relatively, even though you've got these two center pawns here. Yeah. Now, again, talking about controlling squares, right? So we've got this square controlled, this square, but notice this one. Can I make that red or green or something? This one right here. And so Bobby brings his bishop up, and now, again, he's got full control here. And, yeah, got full control. Now Unzinger is going to bring his knight back. He's going to reorient his forces, and we're going to see something very interesting. This is what makes this game a treat. This must be why Fischer included it. I think it's pretty clear this is a one game at this point. But the ending, I think, is really something. So Fischer comes over here. He wants to get the pawn. For his part, Unzicker is moving his king where it can go. And there's a trap. I mean, it's it's a lost position anyway. I mean, right? I mean, but it's just really nice. And so Unzicker says, well, okay, fine. I will get in a position to take, maybe I'm misstating, maybe I shouldn't be, it's a lost position. Maybe I shouldn't be saying it that way. There are plenty of errors that can be made in any chess game, I suppose. So, I mean, we saw that in the previous game, right? Game 9. So, play on. But here, Bobby notices something very important in this position. This knight has very few squares that he can go to. In fact, he has one square. If he were only attacked. And when he moves to this square, we will see what squares he can go to. So Bobby attacks the knight, and the knight clearly has to move. And now if you notice, well, what are the squares that the knight can go to, right? They are all guarded. The knight's trapped. That's the point, right? So this just makes a really nice, I wonder when Unzicker realized this. I mean, he must have realized it, but before this. And so the king just comes here, and yeah, there's nothing to be done. The knight is lost. I mean, I guess the king comes back here, king comes here, and then the knight moves here, and all of that. But with these double pawns, Fischer is going to be able to get whatever opposition he needs. And in fact, I mean, he's coming on to the 6th rank, with this knight and bishop gone, put the king here, and Bobby just has to come on to the 6th rank anyway. So it's not well, of course it can be lost, but so the king would take the opposition, but then we would just push the pawn forward onto the 6th rank, and white would then have the opposition beside his pawn on the 6th rank, and that's all he needs, and that pawn will promote. So really, he only needs this one pawn, it looks like, to me. Well, I suppose this pawn is guarding here. Anyway, that's the game, and 10 down. Let's see, that's 1/6. 1/6. All right, well, I hope you got something out of that. I hope you enjoyed it. If so, give it a thumbs up. And if you'd like to see more, go ahead and subscribe. Thanks very much, and we'll talk to you later.